What's up everyone, welcome back to another POV analysis. Today we're going to be looking at the big Gabe. Two matches from his semifinals against Rainer. Now Gabe is always a very different Terran from, let's say, Maru for example. Gabe is a Terran that likes to win with pushes, 2 base pushes, 3 base pushes. He usually borders, the line of all-in or macro games. A lot of times he goes for 3 base attacks, which he could probably transition from, but would prefer not to. And in this series, it was no different. He had a lot of super strong pushes. We're actually going to open with CC first here. And I also noticed that in his games, he did have some really cool mind games. So I'll be trying to explain those mind games to you guys as well. Help you guys get better at your 2 base and 3 base pushes. And in general, if you like this kind of playstyle, then Big Gabe is definitely your Terran. Now the build starts with a 17 CC, 18 barracks. I noticed that CC First actually made a comeback at the IM Katowice this year. I feel like we haven't seen CC First a lot recently at all. Sometimes it's some meme builds. I saw Maru do it with a 2-on-1. I saw Cure do it with a 2-on-1. But I feel like in this tournament it was actually used a lot, especially for 2 base pushes. Here he goes for the double gas after. No SCV scout yet from here, Marine. I guess in general, one thing that's a bit weird is that CC First is actually very strong against pull first builds. So unless you think your opponent might go for some kind of 1 base roach all-in, then you don't really need to SCV scout with this. Reason for this is that normally pull first links, they deny your base. But if you play CC first, your CC is already finished. Your wall should be up. And there's nothing that the links can achieve. Now he's going to follow that up with a Marine. Probably going to make a depot right here. If I were to make one small adjustment, or is it a factory? Okay, it's a factory. If I were to make one small adjustment here for Hero Marine, is that I would actually use this SCV to make the factory probably. Or send this SCV into the main to mine instead. So you really don't have a single SCV that's vulnerable here in that mineral line, right? I mean, it's a small difference, but if links come in, you would rather lose 0 if SCVs than 1. And at this point, your main isn't even fully saturated yet, so it's perfectly fine to do that. Now on the other side, Rainer is opening very standard. This is a pretty good Zerg map, by the way, Glittering Ashes. So if you were to do a sneaky push like this, this would actually be a really good map to do it. This is a map where you would generally not want to play macro games, at least not standard bio macro games. You could consider going for something like mech. But definitely something cheesy is always good on maps that are good for your opponent's race. Just going to swap over the factory there. So far this looks very standard, right? This just looks like a CC first into Hellions. I guess the second gas is not as common these days because people typically like to go for 3cc openers. But still, overall pretty standard. And it would look the same so for the Zerg. One thing that surprised me a little bit is that this Marine is not over here already trying to deny some kind of Overlord Scout. But he does not actually have a single unit out, so maybe he will do this at this point. So I think this is where the mind games are probably going to begin. Let's see what he makes from this. Alright, here we go. So this might not look like a mind game to you guys, making a Marauder. But this is actually a very strong mind game. The reason is that if you make a Marauder from the barracks early, Zergs will always think you're going for the Marauder Hellbat all-in. That is probably the most popular all-in version. So if you see a Marauder, you see the Viking coming out, you see double gas being mined, you will pretty much always assume that it's that. And that's why it's such a strong mind game. Like right now, Rainer sees this. Let's see what Rainer's response is going to be to seeing that Marauder. Bailing nest instantly. That's step number 1. And sometimes they might even skip some drones. He's even making a spine crawler. You see, this is all just because of the Marauder. A very smooth detail that you may have missed watching this game. But it's a very strong addition to the mind games here. Now, Rainer is playing Overlord Speed. So the chance that he actually gets a scout again and realizes what's going on is very big. But definitely something like that, a sweet touch, making a Marauder. Why not, Maybe you'll mind game your opponent and destroy him just by making that. And you see in this game it was already successful. Then beyond that Marauder, Gabe only made 1 Viking and then made a reactor. So he's going to get a 2nd and 3rd barracks. Now Rainer sees that it was a 3 racks. Actually did cancel the spine as well. You can see the level of mind games and scouting here is very high. Then he's gonna go move on to make a starport on that. Or a reactor on that, excuse me. I think he might even go for 2 more barracks. There we go. If you do a 2 base all-in with 3 barracks, it's already, in TVZ, it's already too much to really go back to a macro game. Like, you need to do so much damage. So Gabe is gonna say screw that and actually add barracks number 4 and 5 as well. Now, Rainer is in a pretty good spot here because he did go for Overlord Speed and scouted everything very fast. As you can see, he stopped at 56 drones and will be able to deal with this accordingly. Though he did get a little bit behind from that early spine and the early baning nest. He also morphed a few Banelings too early as a safety precaution, which also cost him a little bit. And for Gabe, there's not too much exciting to do right now. He has 4 Hellions denying creep. He has the 1 Viking killing the Overlords. Obviously, if you don't want to control those, what I usually do is I will just attack move the Overlord here and just shift click it all over the minimap pretty much. As long as you don't click it into Zerg territory. And hopefully you will find some Overlords. You see Gabe is doing the exact same. Actually clicked right on this Overlord. This is a bit of a higher level move from Gabe. He used the Hellions to scout where the Overlords were. And then he sent the Viking to actually kill the Overlord that was there. Now with speed, they can usually escape. This one actually goes down, which is pretty insane. Now, besides this, all the build order, it's pretty simple. You want to get as many units as possible. There's no add-ons on these extra 4 or 5 barracks. You're going to line up your combat shield with your +1 attack. And then you're just going to hit a really strong timing with 2 or 3 siege tanks. I kind of expected him to wait for the 3rd siege tank, to be honest, because it's so close. But he's going to go with just 2, moving out at about 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Now his Hellion scout denial, or creep denial, has actually been pretty big. This is just 4 Hellions, and somehow Gabe managed to deny all the scouting. And you see, even though Raynor had the information, this push still looks incredibly strong. The timing works out super well, by the way. +1 and combat shield finishing at the same time. You see Gabe is also rallying behind. A quick tip. If you don't know where your opponent's units are, you can also just rally on this depot and reinforce when you actually do have enough units. Like, with the way Gabe is playing, he would definitely be in a little bit of trouble if Raynor would have sent 30 links to counter, because he would have picked up all the reinforcements. Now, you see the position Hero Marine is taking here is very good. Tanks are on the low ground, anchoring there, so it's very hard for Raynor to engage. If Raynor engages, he will always lose a lot of units. Now, you see he's coming from behind. There's not actually that many Banelings here. There's not even Baneling speed done yet. A little bit of a mistake by Raynor there, moving 5 seconds before Baneling speed. And just like that, Hero Marine cleans up the entire army. And that is pretty much going to be it. Keep in mind the follow-up. Hero Marine got to 4 medevacs. Normally you might not win this simply, right? And then he started making Liberators from home. So that is a very strong follow-up. Don't just spam medevacs until you have 25. Definitely make some Liberators after you get 4 medevacs. Or maybe even 6. Let's see, Hero Marine stops at 4. And yeah, at this point Raynor has just lost too much. This tank positioning is also really good, by the way. That's a really good find by Hero Marine. This is usually what I use against Protoss, actually. The tank on the low ground here, denying the access from the 3rd to the natural. Also notice that he never made any more upgrades on his eBay. He didn't start a +1 armor in particular. Which means that he really just wants to end this push with +1 attack. Like I said, Gabe does a lot of very dedicated pushes. Usually tries to end the game pretty fast. And this is another good example of this. Now these 2 Liberators are just locking the game down because the queen count is low. There's literally nothing Raynor can do against these Liberators anymore at this point. Good switch by Hero Marine as well, picking up some units. And yeah, the inefficiency is just too much. And that is game number 1. GG. So here we have it, game number 2 between Hero Marine and Raynor on Curious Minds. Funny enough, Glittering Ashes was quite likely Raynor's pick in the series. Like I said, it's a good Zerg map, and now we're playing on Gabe's map pick, which is Curious Minds. Means this is his favorite map against Zerg. Besides perhaps what was vetoed, which I guess would either be Burning Ground or Blackburn. And I feel like this is very often the perfect map for Gabe. Like, it's a short map. It has a lot of really good pushing positions. You can siege up here. You can siege down here. And I think Gabe will probably have a very good pushing build figured out for this map as well. So far, it's even more standard than the last game. There's no CC first. One thing that's comfortable playing against Gabe is that I think he pretty much never proxy racks. So if you do play against him, you do at least not have to worry about scouting for the proxies. Raynor's scouting a little bit. Actually, he's not really scouting. It looks like he's just keeping his Overlord back at home just in case. Like, very commonly, you would see Zerg scout here. Maybe even up here as well, or up here. But against Hero Marine, Raynor feels pretty safe. Just sends his Overlord across. Obviously, you have to keep one home. I think in lower MMR, you will often see Zerg send both their Overlords across. But at high level, this is very uncommon, to say the least. Here we go. Reaper, Expand. CC on the low ground, of course. And an SCV Scout. I feel like Hero Marine is one of the players that just switches it up. Sometimes you'll go for the SCV Scout, sometimes you won't. And that seems to be what all the best Terran players do. They don't... I feel like I'm the only... I say this before. I feel like I'm the only Terran that sticks to one thing, which is to always SCV Scout. I legitimately have to remind myself, like, let's not SCV Scout this one time out of 20 games. But it feels good when you don't and you get away with it, to be honest. Just a little bit of extra money. Makes your builder a little more tight. Just feels good overall. He hasn't made a gas yet, which made me think he's actually going to go for a 3cc opener this game. Let's judge his Reaper micro here. So far, good enough. Doesn't kill a Zergling yet. Let's see, is he going to get one? It's funny, if you stream and you kill one Zergling, chat will usually type GG because it just... I think even from a Zerg POV, it feels so bad. Oh, he almost gets a drone. He could get a Zergling here if he's looking. I guess he was just looking at home. Obviously, you want to start your CC at home on time. Don't want to, you know, have that delay just because you really wanted to kill one Zergling. And if I had to guess, I think Herobrine, what he usually does on this map is go for Banshee. Which totally makes sense. Like, it's a smaller map. You could die to roaches here. So, going for a 3cc with a Banshee is like the best of both worlds, I guess. You get the economy boost, but you're still pretty safe against roaches or anything like that. And because it's a small... Like, if this was a bigger map, if you go with 3cc Banshee, Banshees do usually not do damage, so I think you would just put yourself in a rough spot. On a map like this, you can totally get away playing Banshee. Same with other smaller maps, like I would say Blackburn, Berlingrad. Maybe even 2K Atmospheres. 2K Atmospheres then generally considered to be the middle map. But on the Zerg maps, I would definitely recommend not playing 3cc Banshee. Like Hardwire, Glittering Ashes, Pride of Altaris. Maybe just use other builds for those. Cheesy builds, mech builds, greedy builds, stuff like that. There we go. He's actually going to go for the Banshee. Does he get the Banshee first or Cloak? Gets the Banshee first. As is standard. The Hellions are coming around here to deny some creep. So far, I feel like this is the most standard TVZ build I've seen. The only reason I think it's cool is just because I already know Herobrine is going to follow this up with a killer push. And he's just doing... I feel like Herobrine just does the right builds for his style always. Like, he's a very logically strong player, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. He knows his strengths, he knows his style, and he does the perfect builds for it. And that's why it's cool. Like, if you want to play a longer game, playing 3cc Banshee might not be the way here. But Herobrine wants to be as greedy as possible without dying, so he can do the strongest push possible, pretty much. I'm surprised he's not lifting this 3rd CC right away. Usually I feel like you want to save some money by lifting that 3rd, getting it in position, and then using the money to make extra barracks. Now, normally I would go on the player's POV, but every time I go on Herobrine's POV, he moves a little bit too much all over the place, and it's hard to follow. So I will just be trying to observe this game, which I'm not fantastic at, admittedly. I feel like he's done less damage with the Hellions so far than in the last game. I wonder if it would be a good move for Zergs to just put an Overlord in one of these pillars, because then you can always see which side the Hellions are on and deny them pretty easily with Queens. Hope I didn't accidentally give them a gold tier tip just now. Let's see, how many Hellions did he make? He made 8 Hellions, 2 Banshees. If you're wondering why he hasn't done anything with the Banshees, this is pretty much the standard way to do it with 3cc. Banshees, when spotted, honestly don't really do anything. So if you can hide them in any way, you usually should. Like, you know, Zergs usually have blind spots anyway, but it's more like if they know Banshees are coming at the bottom, they'll put 3 Queens here and they will literally achieve nothing. So if you at least come as a surprise, you can maybe pick up a few drones on the edges, and that could help you out. And so far he's just on 3 barracks. Gonna go for the tank straight away, which does indicate that he wants to do some pushes. This makes a lot of sense on Curious Minds, by the way. Like I said, this map has insane pushing positions. Banshees are dodging the Spore. Hellions are just killing creep at the same time. Obviously, Herobrine has this early game up until 8 minutes really down. He's definitely one of the best players in those first 8 minutes of the game. Does lose the Banshee. Like I said, Banshees is honestly pretty hard to do damage with. If you play someone as good as Raynor, finding damage is extremely difficult. In this case, he killed 3 drones for a Banshee, which honestly, it could be even worse. It's not great, but it could be even worse. So I guess we're satisfied enough with that. We did kill a decent amount of creep, but at the same time on this map, it's so small. Like, look, this is just a few tumors, right? If you get only a few tumors, the creep is already going to be in your 3rd base. So you would pretty much have to deny creep for the entire game to actually make a difference in that way, right? So you go 5th and 4th barracks finished, probably reactors on those. Notice that Gabe has not made a 5th gas, nor has he made more SCVs than 60. He's currently sitting on 61. Obviously, you want a few SCVs to make depots. I usually recommend to go up to 63 actually. He was making 2 and he cancelled those. I think 63 is the perfect number if you want to do an all-in like this, because you have 60 SCVs for perfect saturation and 3 to make buildings. And here you see what this game is all about. Gabe getting 6, 7, and 8 barracks. Because he pretty much wants to do a 3 base all-in and get a super heavy tank push going on. And what you want to do at the same time... Oh, this is actually a pretty cool maneuver. Gabe wanted to go for that, but he just saw that the queens just had too much energy. Like, you would think Marines do pretty well against queens, but if there's this much energy, it's a bit of a rough trade usually. He is still going to go for it, but probably going to have to run away just because of those queens. And I think if you play this style like Gabe, the macro is honestly more important than doing a lot of damage, because the game is not going to go long anyway. I mean, sometimes it gets hectic, sometimes it goes on for very long, but typically you want the game to end fast, and you want to just be as perfect as you can, up until 8 minutes, maybe even up until 10. Like at this point, Heroine has a super fast 8 barracks. He's actually a little bit late on that armory, which I don't think is going to matter too much, because judging from the supply, Heroine will be attacking before he's at 2-2 anyway. Though obviously it is a little bit of a mistake to get that armory later. And you can see Heroine is not really trying too hard to do damage. He just wants to control the game. He's trying to keep the creep in check. And then at some point he's going to push somewhere. And also on this map you could push anywhere. I think the best place to push in this case might actually be the bottom here, because you can siege this base. But at the same time it would open you up for counterattacks. You can also push on the top. And honestly, I think you can kind of push on the middle here. Normally I think pushing to the middle really sucks. But the reason why it's possible here is because there's a choke. So if you push in the middle, it's still pretty hard to flank because of this really small choke over here. So you see Raynor is going for a massive counterattack. There actually looks to be a flank at this point. He's going to go in. Looks like a really good flank. And actually Raynor set this up really well. This doesn't look like Hero Marine will get anything done. As long as he saves the medevacs. Actually gets a decent trade there. Those Marines were shooting all the time. But still really good flank by Raynor. I feel like they're both pretty late on their upgrades, by the way. Raynor's 2-2 doesn't seem particularly fast. Hero Marine forgot his armory for a bit and then only started the attack. Now, you would think that after this maybe you should just sit back in macro. But Hero Marine disagrees. Hero Marine will always keep going. As you can see, still the exact same thing in the production tab. Marines, tanks, liberators. And the liberator idea is the same as with the 2-base Sultan, by the way. He has enough medevacs, then you start making liberators. Really get this push as strong as possible. Actually gonna get a second factory here. I didn't realize that's actually a move he did. Normally, my transition from this would actually be to make a 4th base, because at some point you're just gonna run out of money. Even if you want to keep all-inning. Gabe instead is just gonna double down on the attack and actually get a second factory. This is a really good drop by Gabe. I'm a bit surprised that Raynor doesn't have enough units here, because he literally followed the drop this entire way here. And like, taking damage against Gabe, I feel like is more dangerous than almost any Terran, because Gabe is always like all-inning or semi-all-inning behind it. So you never want to be in a spot where you're even down like 10 or 20 supply. Like even this small trade goes a long way for Gabe. In against another Terran, you will lose some map control and you get back later. But against Gabe, you just have less units to defend against this all-in, which makes it really scary. I feel like a lot of people get nervous against Gabe for that reason. They know they're about to get pushed at some point. So if you take damage, it must be pretty nerve-wracking. Like if you look at the supply, Gabe has not made any SCVs since his last attack and is currently at a 194 supply. Raynor was actually preparing to go into Lurkers with the Hydra then, but actually I think he might be out of larva. Yeah, he actually has not enough larva for this, which is really surprising. I feel like Zergs don't usually run out of larva. 2 liberators on the same time on the top. He's not even using them with his push. He's using them to just completely deny the mining over here. And this game is honestly pretty insane because Gabe's first push actually failed, and normally against Zerg, it feels like you do have to use those first opportunities always. But Gabe messed it up. But everything was so clean, the harassment was really good, that he's actually still in a really good position here. Raynor's up at 82 drones. He's down 40 army supply pretty much. There's 2 liberators here as well. So many marines. Now Raynor right now is just waiting for his 2-2 to finish. Vipers are on the way, which is pretty much Raynor's saving grace at this point. But can he break this position? Look, keep in mind there's no creep on the high ground here. So if Raynor does commit and he chases, the trades are actually going to be very, very inefficient at that point. There's so many units here for Gabe, I don't even know where to look, honestly. I should probably look at the top because that's where Raynor is coming from. You can notice that Gabe really forces the issue here. Like, he's not waiting for Raynor to attack. He's actually making him really uncomfortable, literally stimming into his mineral line at this point. And the big reason for that is just that the hive units would really shut this down. If there's too many Vipers or Ultras, this attack would just fall flat. And you see really good splits by Hero Marine there, minimizing damage. Pretty much all the Banelings are dead. And there's still, oh my, even more Marines. There's still like 20 Marines here for Gabe. And they just keep streaming out of those barracks. Obviously, without Banelings, you're not going to stop this army. And I feel like Gabe honestly makes it look kind of easy. This is 2 wins in a row against Rainer in the semifinals of the global finals. And yeah, honestly, Gabe's pushes are just insane, man. I feel like he's the only Terran that plays like that. But when it looks good, it really looks good. Like, this is 2 games against the previous world champion, going to him very handily. And yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to sub to the channel and leave a like and a comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios.